Yeah.
Good to see everybody.
So we start with the Heart Sutra.
그런 뒤에서 아마도 weekend mind out general with my nasa. 근데 그러면 아주 그대 용이 스카나 렌치 따서 렌게라 마서네 사 템파님 템파도 닝고 양바
I frustrated that Arya couldn't join us today, but at one time the Bhagavan was telling the Master Bodhisattva together with a great community of monks and a great community of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in the concentration categories of phenomena called profound perception. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, and Bodhisattva required the very practice of profound perfection of wisdom. And they held those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Then, through the power of Buddha, the Venerable Krishna said this to Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, and Bodhisattva. How should any son of the lineage train who wishes to practice the activity of profound perfection of wisdom? He said that when the Bodhisattva, Mahasattva, Arya, and Bodhisattva said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, any son of the lineage or daughter of the lineage who wishes to practice the activity of the profound perfection of wisdom should define it like this correctly and repeatedly, beholding those five aggregates also as empty of inherent nature. Form is empty, emptiness is form, emptiness is other than form, form is also not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, likewise, all phenomena are emptiness without characteristics, reduced to unceased statements, not without saying, not deficient, not fulfilled. Shariputra, therefore, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no visual form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object to touch, and no phenomenon. There is no I element,
and so on up to including no mind element and no mental consciousness element.
There is no ignorance,
No exception of ignorance, and so on up to including no aging and death and no extinction of aging and death. Similarly, there is no suffering, origination, cessation, and past. There is no exalted wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment.
Shariputra, therefore,
Because there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and dwell in the perfection of wisdom of the mind, without obscuration and without fear. Having completely passed beyond error, they reach the end point of nirvana.
all the Buddhas
Who dwell in the three times also manifesting completely awakened to unsurpassable, perfect, complete enlightenment in reliance on the perfection of wisdom. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom, the mantra of great knowledge,
the unsurpassed
the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly classifies all suffering should be known as truth, since it is not false. The mantra of perfection of wisdom is declared. Tayata Omgate Gate Parigate Parasampate Bodhisattva.
Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train the perfection of wisdom.
Like that. When the Bhagavan arose in that concentration and commended the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Arya Akeshvara, saying, well said, son of the lineage, it is like that, it is like that. One should practice the profound perfection of wisdom, just as you were indicated, ignorant to tartless rejoice.
The Bhagavan, having thus spoken,
the
venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva
Mahasattva Arya Avalokiteshvara, and those surrounding in their entirety, along with the world of gods, humans, Asuras, and Gandharvas, were overjoyed and highly praised that spoken by the Bhagavan.
I prostrate for the gathering of
The
the
beings in the three chakras who abide in the holy yoga of using space, by your powers of clairvoyance and magical emanation, up to practitioners like a motherhood child.
Tayata
Om Gate Gate Parigate Parasamgate Bodhisattva. By the teachings of the three supreme jewels possessing the power of truth, may inner and outer humanities be transformed, may they be dispelled, may they be pacified. Shinjin Puriye Soha. May all negative forces opposed to Dharma be completely pacified. May the host of 80,000 obstacles be pacified. May we be separated from problems and harmful conditions to Dharma. May all enjoyments be in accord with the Dharma, and may there be auspiciousness and perfect happiness here.
Saji Pekishusai Metoshan,
Virali Jini Devi Kadi, Sageshin to Miti Hawaii, Jokana Jashina Shopashu, Yidra Gora Amanda, Kandri
Sangye Chadon Tono Tono Rama Meshi Sangye Trupara Shu Sangye Chadon Sangye Chanamba Chancha Parte Dani Ragi Chushi Kebe Sonangi Rama Meshi Sangye Trupara Shu Sangye Chadon Sangye Chanamba Chancha Parte Dani Ragi Chushi Kebe Sonangi Sangye Trupara Shu Kangi Tunzini Songi Sawa Tamche Pandish Tamche Chun Kenji Kodam Kela Changze
Lama Sangye Lama Chu,
Deshin Lama Gedante, Kushi Chepo Lama Te,
Lama Nama Chu. Yung ngap chung ako yamin lerwa, pela. Anin temba den pyo mara, ko ni den gora, chome na pyo gam na chung par gora. Tanda yamin nasati.
So we have to abide by some restrictions concerning, of course, COVID-19. Like, for example, we don't want to sing out loud. That is part of the restrictions. And Geshe said that it reminds him of the situation in Tibet post the Chinese occupation, leading up to the Cultural Revolution, where you were not allowed to take part in religious activities. So people were not allowed to say prayers, so they had to say it either kind of in the heart, without emitting sounds. If they offered battle lamps or candles, they had to hide it in a box, right? So it seems that kind of although the circumstance is different, it seems that we're getting to a point where it's similar, right? So we're not allowed to sing now. We're just kind of saying our prayers silently.
In Victoria, they can't come together. I think in New South Wales, they can't be together. No church.
아니 자와도 좀서 갑자기 아니 직 소종이나 리강은도 신나게 되면도 아니 지 예스 고스 주스도 좀든다 진짜 안 되는 진짜 그 소종 랭도스라.
So all religious activities were prohibited. So during sojourn, for example, monks and nuns surreptitiously used to go out to the mountains, to isolated places, to forests and so forth. Then in hiding, they used to do sojourn together, forming groups of 4, 8, 10 monastics in order to form a sojourn.
사전 디라고이나 단 잠리나니 단디찰이야 아니 덴자 약슈 고급이 약슈 지 아니 라올로니 추칭이 지금 인바나 먼저는 tun긴 참로 지 칼을 타오면나 칼이 껴 짜오는 것도 그러 그냥 딘디 삼도스 에 기부 그냥 나라로 뼈 마스거든요 기부인 뭐 소도스로 간지 지금 미기한테 주주 사진남 단디차리야 아니 다촉 가사가리야 캬니 슝도 가시 다지 댄서랑 슝이 차비팅이 요르데네 소이나 제 고네 세는도 간지 장다른 무슨 슈고야 내단다 간지 딘디마 슈치 차요레스 네 소소도는 지 간심바디 시에서 고급 창조 이거죠 아니 디 주저하마디 수수 점바이나 수수 투바이나 아니지 베자타야리 엔지 칸덴데야리 쇼기 추즈다 시바 참나 란친 간지 사만남다 금분남 갤지 체디기스라 다이나 수수 만져바리 마든 니바메바리 체르스키 체요 마라스 간지 니바 칸요바디 아니 수수 데사기 사제 텔레야 니바 떼는지 인지윈 최고 상성 공원 디킨 안로디기 위해서라
We are experiencing a certain situation, a certain scenario. And yet, when we look at what we do here, we can say that despite the circumstance, we enjoy compatible conditions, best conditions. It's a good place to live. We have a good opportunity, ample opportunities here, particularly for those who are interested in studying, in training. This is such an excellent scenario, situation that we have. We do enjoy those excellent conditions. It's good also to compare our situation to the situation of others in order to develop a greater sense of appreciation to it. Like, for example, Geshe says that there were 116 students in his class, and many of them, having finished their studies, find themselves in different situations, different places around the world. Some of them are at Sera or monastic institutions in India, and they're still continuing with some activities of teachings. But there are those who have to live in faraway places, having very limited opportunities to engage. So in comparison, Geshe reckons that this opportunity here is a marvelous opportunity. It has the opportunity to teach, also to spend some time in studying himself, reading text, waking up in the morning to say his prayers. He wakes up at 4 a.m. in the morning and he begins his practice or his prayer session. So you can recognize the things that you cannot do, that you're incapable of doing now, and there is no point in beating yourself up for the things that you cannot do. You need to look at what you can do and just do your best to do the things that in your capacity. So Geshe says that when he looks at those areas, he really feels happy and fortunate to be able to use the conditions that he has under the current circumstance to make the most out of it.
Terdakazin samdi the new zawani chona tenni bite kana ya meje bonri bandi sajiti saresra.
That being the case, let's go back to the text and pick up from the point that we left off yesterday. So looking at where we are in the text, we're going to pick up from verse 47. So we're looking at point C, explaining how one cultivates joy, that it is possible to abandon the afflictions if effort is made. And this is the third point in the section of being conscientious about abandoning afflictions as part of being conscientious about the trainings. So point C, cultivating joy that is possible to abandon the affliction if effort is made is, this point consists of 3 points. We're going to pick up from the third point. If they are completely uprooted, there is absolutely no place that supports their existence, and thus it is reasonable to say that they can be abandoned.
Terda sajidi tachidan samalo nenga chimbu kyang ra chunju tang kon thabardata nenga kyang sungu dos tinan tachi number sanji chu chingin sogi thatu gi kombandi sanji kombandia sikogros and sanji kombandi top the mato said nimu pacha the cheba pang mabanglaya took the yenza the nimu pacha the cheba panya yori yomari said the nenga shujle tugoras ketsi nimu pacha the cheba panya mena and nganzu sanji komba said the and katsum sigzamado tenla and shima towaji chadogoras ra.
Looking at the outline, all the points that are put forward here are vital points, are important points. They're important in this presentation of Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, but also it is important to us as followers of the Buddha Dhamma. Our final object of attainment is Buddhahood. This is what we set to attain ultimately. In order to be able to do that, we need to eliminate afflictions together with their imprints. If the elimination of afflictions together with their imprints is not possible, whatever we speak about is totally in vain. It is totally, you could say that it is empty words if what we set to accomplish cannot be accomplished.
Things are Nimu Pang said, Panju Nimutia, Ran the Jeni Chini, Ranju Nimu Paya Remato, Shenju Nimudi, Nanzu Pangoyasi Kiomala, Panya Tavi Yomaris, Pantuya Yomaris, Panya Yomaris, the Kanji. Things are Panju Nimudi, Ranju Nimudi Chaguanza, Nanzu any Tap Lam Kandachi Goni. And some look Kartangiana, and it looks the dream, some town Gosadi, and it Rangi, Numu Paya Ditolaya, and it looks the dream, Lobjon Chianere, and it Gongia in a re, a kanji or Dichiare was Ra, Kanji Sawa di Rangi Juji Numu di Samach Sotuana, and it Kawardro Kawadenaya, and it Taki would do Pythagoras, and his Shanayan Pendage to Vina, 디톤을 접두기요래 람든 지권에 디톤을 람든 탈심버지 윤거다 가진 아니 겨울음 주 송반나지 잔주 삼버 속이 오늘 타내기 남주의 뎀베다 람든 편딩이데 잔주 삼버 차딩도 송반나시 디레도 왔더라.
So our goal is to eliminate afflictions, to abandon afflictions. Now, rather than setting our goal to be the elimination of afflictions in somebody else's mind stream, our main goal, our principal goal is to abandon afflictions in our own continuum. We'll not be able to abandon the afflictions in somebody else's continuum. Right? So this is not what we seek to accomplish. What we seek to accomplish is to abandon or to eliminate my own afflictions in our own continuum. So whatever we think of, whatever we consider, whatever we study, whatever we train, whatever we meditate on, all this endeavor is made in order to abandon afflictions in my own mind stream, in my own continuum. And if effort is made in that vein, then wherever we are, whatever we do, we'd be able to live in happiness, to dwell in a comfortable state. Otherwise, if we do not make effort to eliminate afflictions in my own continuum, in our own mind stream, we'll not be able to live comfortably or happily wherever we are. And this is also the point that His Holiness was emphasizing in yesterday's teachings, in saying how Bodhisattvas are intelligent, they are smart, because they accomplish their own welfare as well as the welfare of others through dealing with their own mind stream.
tenjen dewan jong in gyunsen la teni ani nyumu panju yobata tawa tolju yobadi ani ribanam da di gonu ta jogyun dum ta ga di tsores ro di tsores.
It's a good opportunity to study in praise of dependent arising with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. It's actually those events coincide in a really nice way. So in giving those teachings on Tsongkhapas in praise of dependent arising, we also deal with the same question. Can afflictions be abandoned? Can the state of liberation and omniscience, can they be attained? So we touch upon those points: the elimination of afflictions, liberation, omniscience, dependent arising, the absence of independent existence, asserting that phenomena do not exist from their own side, do not exist independently, that they are dependent arising, which is the correct reason for asserting the attainment of the state of liberation and the state of omniscience.
아니 주전 잠봉 공부기 땡중 온도지 송기 깔아야다 즉 추주기 아니 쳐버주수기 아니 캠퍼스물이야 쳐버정원이 아니 델레데니 도자 아니 땡중 온도지래야 아니 당원기 비쳤다 쳐버져버리스 다 당원기도 될래야 오늘 당원기도 오늘 당원기도 송면만이 원본 농부 당원기술이 아니 식점나 뭐 그게 리벨람 당원기 걸세 리바디 아니 제단남 넘버숨 뎀바메바 디 텐드 임비 균생 거발 때니 아니 균생 디톤다 추주기 요래야 당원기술 송여러 왔으라.
The protector Maitreya in his ornament for clear realization, the Abhisamaya Alamkara, begins the text with paying homage to the three pristine awarenesses, to the three types of exalted knowledges. And in so doing, he seeks to inspire faith or the sense of clarity in the three types of pristine awareness. So you can look at this verse for paying homage to the three types of pristine awarenesses from the point of view of followers of sharp faculties and those of dull faculties. Those of sharp faculties do not develop this clarifying faith just based on the words. They develop that also in conjunction with reasons such as, for example, of the absence of true existence of the three, the basis, the paths, and the results. So when they then develop faith in using reasons for seeing the lack of true existence of the basis, paths, and result, they develop clarifying faith in the three pristine awarenesses.
Terdinza sangi Toma Sombi and she Demba Senabundu, Demba she Slana chose Dia and Teda Mededi and Tendrik Talateni and Drugo Gores. Tell them big and Kambasum, big Yentu and Chanju Samba and Sangi and Kambasum Dia and Rangula Kia got the Mesa Dia and Tendrik Rivalateni, Pogo Gores. The G Rivalateni, one Tani somebody, Tanda Dembach, Yamni Chiju Yabachi, and Ribe Lamni, and Tondi, she ni, and Sangi. Just the Chamongombi and the songs of Tenjung on the Gilia, Tanking in tea, on the number is, but didn't the song your as rap.
The presentation that the Buddha gave, the explanation of the two truths. So the four truths is admissible when you use the reasons of dependent arising. And likewise, when you look at the way that the practitioners of the three vehicles, here solitary realizers and bodhisattvas, engage with their own path. So when you look at the three pristine awarenesses, nor of basis, nor of paths, and nor of all aspects, they are also admissible using the reasons of dependent arising. And this is the way that those of sharp faculties engage with their study of this material in order to develop understanding of those topics in Maitreya's ornament for clear realization. They do that through developing the reasoning of dependent arising.
There's a cup the done you pong you about the attending Shibalaya, Yachit Yatamata, and Tenjoin with Kunzingi, and Numu pong you about the Yashatam drew to Rosra.
And it is also exactly the same point that is made here in point C. If they are completely uprooted, there is absolutely no place that supports their existence, and thus it is reasonable to say that they can be abandoned. They can be abandoned because of the reasons of dependent arising.
Tenjung Numu di Tenjung begins in Numu di any Raman to Matravati. So Dugoras. Numu round the Trubamaris Laundi, Numu Yuli around the Matrona, and Shana then enjoying Badi, Taran Dugoras. That Shana then enjoying the that Gugin Shangela then Jungu Yoba and Jangal Kiwachim Bati. Jangal Kiwajim, Gula Tenguyoba. The Gula then enjoying the Gula then any Gudro Yobat, Guransi changeable, two Sudrondi, and Numulea, Jotan Kiobadi. Tenjung Ribiton, most do to God is right.
Afflictions can be abandoned because they are dependent arising. Saying that afflictions are dependent arisings, they arise in dependence upon others, means that they are not established independently. If they are not established independently by their own power, it means that they can only be established in depending upon others. And if they are established in dependence upon others, it means that they are produced intermittently, that they are intermittent, that they are not, that they do not exist independently. They are not produced by their own power. And that is, since that being the case, they can be abandoned. If we work with cause and conditions, in that due to the power of cause and conditions, they are produced in certain situations, then we can change that scenario so that they are no longer produced.
Tarita Nimu Pani, any Nimu Patrick 7 the Chibu Ponce Vigilaya, Lar Joya Mebatia, Lar Joya Mebatia, Tenjong Riviton, Duchores, Ra.
So that afflictions are abandoned together with the seeds to the point in which they will never arise again, can be established by the reason of dependent arising, right? So it can be proven through the reason of dependent arisings that afflictions together with the seeds can be abandoned to the point in which they will never arise again.
Kansana Nimu Ponsul di Nanzu Nimu Desagi, such a Jivu Jabs some Maimba, Nimu Kiwi Kishi 7 the Chibadi, never so to the Nimu Ponsul the Chagoras. The Kokishi 7 the Chibat Zawini, never Chesa Vigilia, then see good Zawini Mena, Jebin John Musigodi, Nanzu Tonchu Yonguras, Monsum Tontu, when the Jebel dollars over medals of the Chigi. And it's our 7 the Zawini Mena, Kotzawan John Musigodi, Manzumosum Tungora, did the Chigba, Rodinza, Numu, and Tenjong Ribet on the Numu Pani, Tharman John, Tenjong Ribet on the Drup 2, Numu Pani over there, Tenjong Ribet on the Drup 2, Tawatogi over there, Tenjong Ribet on the Drup 2, San Gigi over the Tenjong Ribet on the John, Tenjig Ribadi, Ribi Gabo, Tenjig Tenzi Somon, one Tanigi, and the Ribi Gabo Chai over the, and pay some Tamana, Kogi over Chagados, is it Tinji, and Tenjig Namsha D. The talent and the Jawaji Kundunita and the Shuji one the Tani Kawas on the Shuch race rock.
And when we then think of the meaning of afflictions being uprooted and the place that they are uprooted from, it's not that the place that they are uprooted from is vast and extensive. This is not the way that we need to think about it. The way to think about it is that when afflictions are being uprooted, is that they are uprooted from the very seeds, which means that the causes of the afflictions, the seeds of the afflictions are uprooted, they are eliminated. So that if the seeds, if the causes are eliminated, the result will not arise. So this is something that we can, this is a reason that we can think of and clearly see the validity of that reason. For example, externally, we can clearly see that if you eliminate the seed of a certain fruit or of a certain crop, by the elimination of the seed, the result will not be produced. The result will not arise if the cause is eliminated. So similarly here, when we think about the development, the production of the afflictions, if the causes of the afflictions, the seeds of the afflictions are eliminated, if they are uprooted, the result, the afflictions cannot arise. So we use the reasons of dependent arising in order to see the validity of the elimination of the afflictions, the attainment of the state of liberation, the attainment of the state of Buddhahood. The thing that proves the tenability of those states is the reason of dependent arising, which is regarded as the king of reasoning. So think about it. If you think about it, can see how it makes sense using the reasons of dependent arising that afflictions can be eliminated, that liberation in the state of Buddhahood can be attained. And this is the import of the teachings that His Holiness is giving nowadays when he's teaching in praise of dependent arising. How fortunate we are for being able to attend those teachings. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, His Holiness will be teaching in praise of dependent arising, which is the essence of all the teachings that the Buddha gave. His Holiness himself is the holder of the teaching, the Lord of the teaching. In some sense, you can say that even if the Buddha himself came to this worldly realm now, there is no higher or better teaching that he will be giving, that teachings that are better or higher than the teachings on dependent arising. So then in receiving those teachings, Geshe says that it's important to generate faith and samaya in His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, the teacher of this set of teachings, because through that we receive the blessings and the lineage or the continuation of these teachings. Which means that we need to make sure that we do it ourselves. The development of faith, the development of samaya is something that we need to make sure that we do. Otherwise, if we do not generate faith, if we do not generate samaya with respect to the one that gives those teachings, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and with that, then we will just be listening to these teachings. There would be no much benefit. Let's look at the verse itself, but as we're looking at that in using Yetsa Dhammarinpo's commentary, it first off in his commentary begins with an argument. Since the afflictions are generated from one's own continuum and exist inherently, they cannot be abandoned, right? So someone might say that since they are generated in one's own continuum and they exist inherently, they cannot be abandoned. To that, Shantideva says, afflictions do not abide in the object, not in the faculties, nor in between, since they are also nowhere else. Where do they go to harm all sentient beings?
Rangulaya, Nimu Ranjing to Yomaras, Ketsi, Nimu Ranjing to Yobaina, that Nanzu Semni, Nimu Ten Savijelaya, Nimu Pan Savijelaya, the Nimu Koran Dodo Yobaina, and it's Sujenda Maso, that she to the name Dego Ras, Ra, Yomares, Kansana, that Nimu Kisagi, you'll get into Nigmari, Ombunga into Nigmari. In deep Parlayan Nigmari, Kanji Numun Nesaka Yulchik Savani Yomares.
So here, Shantideva addresses a certain argument that someone might put forward. So the person might say that it is not possible to rid ourselves of afflictions in our own continuum because they exist inherently. It is not possible to harm the afflictions because they exist inherently. Someone might put forward this argument. We do not agree with inherent existence. We do not we do not agree with the afflictions as existing inherently, right? So we do not accept that. What we say is that if afflictions existed inherently, would have meant that even if you were to expel them from your own mind, like uproot them, remove them from your own mind, you need to find a place or somewhere where they dwell as a concrete thing, right? As if there is a lump of something that is the afflictions. This is the meaning of something existing inherently, that it exists in a concrete way. There is a lump of something that is the afflictions. And in that being the case, you need to point where it is. Is it in the object? Is it in the faculties? Is it in space? And so forth. So we say that if the afflictions existed inherently, they would have to be found in one of those places, either in the object, either in your mind, either in the faculties, or in space. But you cannot find them in any of those places. So we first of all read through the first two lines in verse 47. Afflictions do not abide in the object, not in the faculties, nor in between. Since they are also nowhere else, where do they go to harm all sentient beings? When Geshe Dhamma explains these two lines, it says, the afflictions do not remain in the object, do not remain, or they do not dwell or exist in the objects of form. Because in this case, our hearts would generate afflictions when they see forms. So the first section of this verse says, afflictions do not abide in the object. So let's say that the object is form. If afflictions existed inherently, and they would exist in forms, for example, in the object form, it would have meant that anyone who would see form would develop attachment or afflictions with respect to that form. So what about arhats that have abandoned the afflictions? If afflictions are in the object, arhats would also generate afflictions. Also, it says they also do not remain in the collections, remain or dwell, abide in the collection of the sense powers of the eyes and so forth, because when one contemplates the meaning of the mode of abidance, and that is done with the mental consciousness, right? So when one uses the mental consciousness to scrutinize, to analyze the mode of abiding, the mode of existence, one cannot say that the afflictions exist inherently in that way. So it says, because when one contemplates the meaning of the mode of abidance, the eyes exist, but the afflictions do not.
다 대답이 발나 다 간지 유단 유진이기 유그된데메 유진기된데메 뒤 발라야 내가 매바디 뉴무 코라라 뉴무 코라 유진기 찾기로 왔어 유진기 찾기에서 어머나 유진기들 샤고 어머나 유진기들 이 가면 발 내가 매바디 그 유진지 비차네 엔 싸우니는다 가서다 균 주지요 말했어 주지면서 진짜 다 강디한테 내매바디 강디한 내매바디 엔피기 제비리바 선음도 텐종 그리비톤 다 주비용도 진짜 니무치 좀 토바이나 되는 베드 때문에 차버리마도 산종이요 말이스
They also do not exist in between or somewhere else. So using this reason, we negate their existing in the object. They also do not exist in the subject. Afflictions themselves are subjects, which means that the object possesses, they have objects. As such, if you look for them, you look for them in the object. You negate their existing in the object. Then you negate them existing in the subject. If they do not exist in the object, they do not exist in the subject, can they exist in between? You thereby also eliminate them existing in between the object and the subject. So if you have negated them existing in the object, in the subject, and in between the object and subject, you have altogether negated their existing in that way. There's no other option of them existing in that particular way. So therefore, using the reason of dependent arising, we have completely negated their inherent existence.
Deni gunda tishin yilan jibon sheshi zambaten temen yundu talanya sonam chidi never chess kanjin denis nyumun deni gumanda dawa ra demba meji ani demba meji tani biobata gumada dawa imba teachers tini tinza ta ko ani hinaya ani jibo ponbiche and she just Jambadens, Jamie Dalani Sonam Chidineva chess, Newmund and the Ranji tribute Shield, Ranji Trubano, Yumada Dawati, to Ranji tribute Zawani Pomini Yamdu, Hinland Jibo Ponla, Tony Toby Sherikini, Numu Pombichel, Jambatemba Riki, Tedder Legion to Temo Nidu, Dala Nevala Sobin on Sonam Chidineva Chet Judy, Juba Miri Source.
Since it is like this, where can the afflictions that were uprooted in this way and which exist from the onside go to inflict harm? They do not abide anywhere. So these two paragraphs explain the first two lines in verse 47. Let's read through the last two lines in this verse. Since they are like illusions, abandon fear in the heart and rely on striving for wisdom. Why harm myself meaninglessly with the hells and so forth? So we assert that the afflictions do not exist inherently. They do not exist truly. And therefore, they are just like illusions. Since they are like illusions, abandon fear in the heart and rely on striving for wisdom. So the remaining of Geshe Dhammarinpoche's commentary reads, these afflictions are like illusions. They are empty of inherent existence and yet appear as if they exist from the onside. Therefore, abandon the fear in your heart that they cannot be abandoned because of existing inherently. Having generated the wisdom that realized emptiness, it is suitable to strive in abandoning the mental afflictions. Since one has this ability, why would one create meaninglessly the harm of the lower realms of the hells and so forth? This is unsuitable. Previously, the meaning of not abiding was also explained as having abandoned the seed. Right, the meaning of not abiding was also explained as having abandoned the seed.
공도 셰바 대달 넘버 토말 삼나 지게 셰비 찬주 샘다 찬주 샘비 라바송이 치도 땜비 치들 송바다 바요 공부는 배버 차디 만디 멤비 nga 마님바 멘타기 네버 쭈기 네버 수버 칼이요디 무즈버 셴노 대남 멤버 침비 땜비 송신 니무 공원은 배버 차고 장기 니비 뇨버다 타시 개와 문님 공도 배워니 We're
getting closer to the end of this chapter. Let's look at the next point. So we've covered the brief presentation of the way to cultivate conscientiousness in the first verse of this chapter. Then we had an extensive explanation of the main body of chapter number 4. And the next verse, number 48, gives us a synopsis of chapter 4, the way to cultivate conscientiousness. So looking at this verse in the commentary to this verse, it says, strive to achieve the trainings that were thus explained and contemplated. There is no medicine that can cure if one does not listen to the advice of the physician. Contemplating the above way repeatedly, make an effort to strive with conscientiousness in how the Buddha earlier explained bodhicitta and to protect the trainings. There are no sickness that can be cured only by medicine without listening to the instructions of the physician that contain many truths. Strive in abandoning the afflictions according to the instructions of the great physician. So there's also here a verse, a summarizing verse by Geshe Dhamma. Freedoms and the memory of faults, increasing virtue without degeneration. Freedoms from the memory of faults, increasing virtue without degeneration. This depended with certainty on meditation on conscientiousness. Therefore, those proficient should always depend on conscientiousness. The name of the chapter reads, this is the commentary on the 4th chapter called Showing Conscientiousness. So teaching conscientiousness from the commentary on the introduction to the actions of Bodhisattvas called The Entrance for the Children of the Conquerors.
Is there a source?
Yeah.
Is there a source, you mean for this? Dila Geshe Dhamma ki rangi nyebe nyokpa tan cheshin gewa minyang kondu pewa ni nyamba bayu gomba la ra lebe serto. Dila khun yorbe di Geshe Dhamma Kuran zebarve semanen di lungre kane chinas.
Tiri tauda chesu dele sha ani kuni mengang dogo yes. And living our one sign to his. Right.
Just like that. Well, before Geshe gets to that, it seems that we are we are finishing exactly in the right place. So we finished chapter number 4, and we'll start tomorrow chapter number 5. It's also Venerable Paya needs to go to the doctor. So it seems like, sorry? All right, Dechen and Palyun. There is a stampede. Exodus, yeah. So it's a right way to conclude this, or right point to conclude this chapter.
Any chick sanji song that chick jalapen song in the Yoko, you teach in the Yujitan Montana, the Yujiris. In a young Nanju Juji, Numu took some D, any Numu took some Yoba the Tower, Gawa combat the Doyadi, two Gundingi, Sozu Lunga Yisum, Gichova, Paya Tembala, Rade Yobati, and Nanzola Yamyos Shushu Kilmardina. Yamyon this Yobatiga, Chobachetu was.
Isn't the gets the Marinching Gizebare, I mean, a nunchi in this. So, so this verse itself, this very verse was composed by Geshe Damarinchen himself. So rather than taking it to be a quotation from another source, Geshe reckons that this is something that the author of the commentary himself has said. So we studied the writings of different scholars that have composed the commentaries on treatises or commentaries on teachings of the Buddha, and it is not uncommon to find summarizing verses in either the end of a certain explanation or in between different parts of the explanation. This is a way that those scholars have extracted meaning that they have begotten it in their explanation. And you can say that they express the summary of that meaning in a short verse. So it's not uncommon for those great scholars to do that. It's, in some sense, it is also a way of showing their scholastic qualities. Have you got any other questions? Chokina?
Also, Geshe, yesterday, in relation to the commentary, verse 43, there's a comment about, in that last paragraph of the explanation in later commentaries, I just wondered if Geshe could elaborate or clarify the meaning of that, because I'm just not sure.
All right, so yesterday we've covered verse 43 and also the commentary to verse 43. Geshe Damarinchen says in his commentary, in later commentaries, they are referred to as something to be abandoned, but then they talk about the meeting in battle of that to be abandoned and the antidote become redundant. So it's not very clear. Could Geshe explain that?
Yeah.
Shogdon Gyatan Sunchuyo. Ja, die ganna. Så sen de niba sashtua.
Niba.
Så sen de ganna. Dewa chi deyan shomja sheva ni onja sebana panyin yutu mi gobe dun to sashtua. De sabosta min dosa de shi kyaptunas.
Tanda Jojugi Geshe said, Timandros, Tingy Yahujahamanda, Javas, Chi Tan Shomja Shepan said, and Tandanganzugi, Numula 가서 큰진 제와다 방샤를 가서 님불이야 신치와디 아니 깨마르베 대방고 말을 세치 저지와 어디라고레스 다 니무 방서비 제라야 니무라야 큰진 제대비 어디 아니 가서다 shomsha kapkala yang tian shomsha re se tin di sik thungu girwa di shomsha songba di pangja nyumu seba na tin di gi nyumu la khunjin ji lo di lo do do tian re ma do nyumu la khunjin ji lo di nyumu pang wa na shi nyimbu ten pang gu tian ma res o dila wa res yul te mu gu tian se di shomsha seba ni pangja sebana panyi yutu mugu tendos pangja sebana pangja nyumu sebana nyumu la khunzen jibi lodi ani pangja dang dele nimbo timbigi ani nimbo gomche ni phate gumares koran sedo le do jinda wase
Tempo gombangi jawala kenza da chi sunsha dila
kombe ani
dila
loya machu
dila Nyomon la magawa yaman kunzin sea tan nyembo la gawa cheba shemba cheba ani shidi seba resa
shiduris
ya shidu resa
tiket jidan shidulaya jidan shibi chachi shagyo mara enaya ani phugi ani kebangashi and in this song here the tea chele and rogo gira
yaman apeshir sango pan toy chedu topa sama pango gro
toba sama da toba sama thodo
to ya thodo gre chesam peshe de chana
oda pangja shidu da nindu khaya shagi mewadi tajita jerumji gombala tsawni shagi mares
So first of all, looking at this reference, in a lot of commentaries, there is also another commentary to Shantideva's Guide to Bodhisattva Way of Life, which is quite a famous one. It's called a Great Commentary. Maybe in later commentaries is referring to that great commentary to Shantideva's text. Geshe is not sure. But anyway, they are referred to as something to be abandoned, which means that what we're talking about here is the dislike to the afflictions, resenting the afflictions, or adhering to the antidotes. So someone might say that these need to be destroyed. In that sense, they are to be abandoned and need to be destroyed, right? So in a lot of commentaries, they are referred to as something to be abandoned. But then they talk about the meeting in battle of that to be abandoned and the antidote become redundant. Geshe reckons that what it means here is something that we have mentioned yesterday. So we spoke about those attitudes in which you like the antidote or you adhere to the antidote and you resent the afflictions.
I think that's what happened to me. Oh God, most likely.
Was it meant to us? Okay, so so as we said yesterday, kind of we need to develop those attitudes now as beginners, but later on when afflictions are abandoned, also the dislike to the afflictions and the liking of the antidotes will also dissipate on its own accord. If afflictions are no longer there, also there would be no need to begrudge the afflictions, and there would also there wouldn't be that adherence to the antidote. They will go away, dissipate by their own accord. Also, in my conversation with Geshe, I mentioned that in Khenpo Kumpal's commentary says that the liking of the antidote or adhering to the antidote and begrudging the afflictions are regarded as cognitive obscuration. So the school of thought that we follow, first of all, in our tradition asserts that there are no consciousnesses that are cognitive obscurations. Right? Cognitive obscurations, that group of obscurations, do not include any consciousness. But then you can still interpret this statement in a particular way. You can say that maybe there are some other schools of thought or some traditions that do a certain form of consciousness that is cognitive obscuration. So that's one way that you can go with that. Another way that you can go with that is to say that all conceptual consciousnesses are overcome, or you can also say that they disappear once the state of enlightenment is attained.
Just, so I'm still not sure what the precise point he's making here. Is he refuting the later commentaries, saying it's just that it becomes redundant because of the process just explained, as Geshe explained yesterday, that once the what is regarded as dislike or attachment, as an antidote, once the affliction goes, then that goes with it. But I understand that. Is that what the meaning of becomes redundant, or is it saying what later commentaries say is contradictory, and therefore it would become redundant? That's what I'm not sure.
그래서 이 계란 카르숨바디 고추기도 사이나 디라 저와 치 대한 숑잘 셰바니 판자 세바나 판인 유튜브 미고바 든세디 디 딱딱틱 디 딱딱딱 고추기도서 디 계란 탄다 카르숨바디 직바르베 시야마나 디 YouTube Migova Dunsa di Lab Magovares di Kandachinas.
Chazan Devar la Slavat, Devar la Chi Tans Laundi, Chi Chima di College Avarsna, Tambu Nimupan Savi, Jesu, and Nimu la Kunzinji, Lo Teyan, Shamja Res Shedeva Tislavata. Devar di Tanda Dinalola, Java Dinalola, you are saying, Java the Sega Mundumodo, Java Chigla, Kanji, Chunjuk, Java Peshe, the Pendri Ingimar, Jagar Kibi, Chunjuki, Java the Mambudo, Tindichi Ingires. Tindi Java Chiganalola, Jadasumchu.
Chi Javala, Chi Dayang, Chi in a Chita.
Java Slara. Java said in Javala. Javala cheese. Chi said the Chimala cover. Hama the Chimadi. Chimadi Hama Kasha person, Hama Nimu Pambalasha. Nimu Pansavijilla, Nimula Kunzin Chibi, Lotea, Chi, Tea, Jamja Reslandi, Jamja Sana, Panjalagor. Namdari. Jamja Sheshava D, Javadina Loya, Jamja Sheshava Dis, and Injimi Delia, Nimbo. Nimu Nanjing, Nimbu Gombi, Levi, and Yul Teslavna, Copa Pigo, Tenda Marias. Panja Nimu Koran Sevana, Tindi Lodi, Dogger with Terries, Jazorji Disungores.
Looking at the Tibetan itself, I feel that it's either mistaking the translation or that there is a sense of ambiguity in the way that it is expressed. So Geshe is reading through that section differently. So rather than saying that in later commentaries they are referred to, it can be read in the following way. In the commentary, it doesn't specify which commentary. The word later, so it's not in later commentaries, it's just, you can read it as in the commentary. The word later refers to something occurring after the abandonment. So if in the commentary, the word later is referring to what happens after having abandoned. Then having abandoned the afflictions, using the antidote, you don't need to do anything about the resentment of the afflictions or the adhering to the antidotes, because they dissipate, they go out on their own accord when the afflictions are gone, when they are no longer present or exist. So therefore, the meeting in battle of that to be abandoned and the antidote become redundant, in a sense that you don't need to apply an antidote to the resentment of the afflictions or to the liking or adhering to the antidote.
Dunga tamchi zaw nimu re sede joros ra dunga tamchi zaw nimu ten rangyu gu nimu re mado shengyu gu nimu gu nganzo la ya dunga mus jintu maras tinza sozu la ya tamandi ba tamchi jonsa gu zaw di ngi gu nimu diresha samsam gi lo tende roas inza ngi di nimu di takta meba sogo sambi gi pila ya sem la ya ani ngashu jian joros dila gores ro ni di takta meba soga sambi lo di namji chida ni di mit takta soga samna ti chi lo di marab cho to je yoras ti da number 2 maro je chagoras kanji ni nyumun di takta meba soga sambi lo di ani ti nimbu chore mando panji chole ya zaw ni drogmara kansin nyumun jomje gi cho imba di siu shu chagoras di panji cho di shawana dew zaw ni yomares inaya rangi gi nimu di pantsave jele ya ni gi nimu takda sug samilo di tagaran thodogros la thodogros ra.
Geshe reckons that the meaning that we get it in this section is recognizing, first of all, that the root of all my suffering is affliction. And afflictions are in my own continuum, in my own mind stream. This is the root of all my suffering. And when we say that the root of all our suffering is our own afflictions, we can generate that strong mind thinking that I need to obliterate my afflictions. I need to completely eliminate them. So in general, we can say that just the thought I need to obliterate something is a rude or crude state of mind. In general, we would regard that way of thinking that I need to eliminate something, I need to obliterate someone, as being a crude state of mind. But when that is pointed, so first of all, Geshe said that this is seeing the afflictions as causes of our own suffering is a factually concordant consciousness. Needing to obliterate them seems to have to be similar in some sense in aspect with a crude state of mind. But still, we don't regard that as an antidote. We don't regard that as an affliction. You can say that it's still classified within the group of antidotes. It is still within the camp of the antidotes. So think that thought that I need to obliterate my afflictions, it will dissipate on its own accord. It will go away on its own accord once the afflictions are gone. No. Then Terry is asking, could compassion also be the way of overcoming the afflictions? Nyomong doigi tundala ninja komnayan dende ninja kombe wangi nyomong do yon segirebes.
The new shukchon dread the Yasjada Maravas, Madonji any Ninji Chiku Gomalaten, Nimutzanin, Ponto Marsta, causing him on the town there, the Chansomon and Gamishin in such a say, Mugi Nimbudi, Chagio Maris, Mado Ninji computer Nimu Shukchon dread, Seu Shujiras, Ra, Nanzu Nimu di Mumbi Wangi, Chadan Jengi Yobati, the two this Chadam Mosum the red was. In the Nimu Kisag Yuldaya, Ninji Gombayana, Chadan Thodograsta, Ra.
You can reduce the power of afflictions through the cultivation of compassion. That is possible. But you cannot overcome the afflictions or abandon the afflictions just through the development of compassion, because in quoting previously, and I think that the quote came from the Pramanapartika, that love and the like cannot overcome the afflictions. So I'll rephrase it. Anger and so forth cannot be overcome by loving kindness or love and so forth, because they are not contrary to that in the mode of apprehension. So afflictions, there are three poisonous afflictions: anger, attachment, and ignorance, still rise in the mind stream. And through the development of compassion, you can reduce the power of anger and the like. This is possible. But they cannot completely eliminate the afflictions, because compassion is not contrary to them in its mode of apprehension.
Yeah.
So the last question was with respect to appearances. That also came up yesterday. So are appearances as cognitive obscurations, are they permanent or are they impermanent? De la nangwase di la shidibla nangwatan parcha ni shagirwa nangwase di takpares mi takpares kunchinas.
Now the demidujeres, metavares, shidu jayu now the ninan to chat lagota kanji, ninan to chat lagores. The demidujesagores.
So the appearances that are part of cognitive obscurations are non-associated composites, which are part of impermanent, the group of impermanent phenomena. Right? There are appearances of factors of mistaken dualistic appearances. So those factors of mistaken dualistic appearances are impermanent. They are non-associated composites. All right, let's do some dedication. And reminding you guys that His Holiness will be teaching at 1:30 today. May I quickly become Guru, Lord Buddha, and lead each and every sentient being into his enlightened realm because of these merits. May the Supreme Jewel Bodhisattva, which is not arisen, and that which has arisen never diminish but increase more and more. In this land encircled by snowy mountain, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chindrasic dancing gods of this remain until samsara ends. You uphold the subduous moral way, and standing, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, or masterfully accomplishing. In the three jewels, protector of myself and others, your disciples, please live long.
Thank you, Geshe. Thank you, Venerable Captain.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, don't drop his there. Thank you. Don't drop. No. It's dissipated like the afflictions.
It's dissipated already.
Hello. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I was wondering where you were. Thought that you flown the group.
Adelaide to see my sister. Sorry.
Oh. So, did you make your way through the back roads and stuff, or did you fly in?
Where to see you? Yes,
Right.
baby and nephew.
Bibi.
Baby.
So, with your parents or just you?
Yeah, with mum. Yeah.
All right.
That was really good.
Is
Yeah,
it
that's
their
very
first grandchild?
Yeah, her first, yeah, and so my first nephew. Yeah, he's so cute, so squishy, and so like, yeah.
So they just squat?
It's the smell. Yeah.
So you're one of those people that like babies?
I guess so.
Okay.
So for a little while, then you give them back.
Yes.
Nice to see everyone. Thank you.
So
Oh, you're still there? Hi, Dondra, you're still there?
He's muted.
You muted yourself. You can unmute.
I think I've maybe left it in.
Oh, he might have left it open.
Yeah, left it open.
I just was asking last night if, the mind and mental factors, the mental
Yeah.
factors sheet,
Yeah.
is that already in the Dropbox?
No, but I'll put it.
I put it there.
I'll put it now.
That's all, because we were
Okay.
doing Precious Garden, exactly the same spot.
Ah, you were listening yesterday to.
Yeah, I
That's cool.
listened to Geshe Sampton